You do not need to adjust your screens.
How
Yeah.
tall are you, Matt?
So I'm 6'8". I'm 6'8". I'm about 130 kilos. So I'm a big boy. I'm a big boy. I'm not a little one by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I came across Matt at oh bloody hell,
South Coast?
uh, South Coast Gym, and had some work done on my shoulder, trapped nerve. I had all sorts of stuff going on. And then, Matt told me a bit about what he's done in the past, and it's just brilliant. So we'll start with that, Matt, if that's all right.
Yeah, 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 100%.
How your journey into being a sports therapist happened.
Yeah, yeah. So, like my journey around sports and training and what have you started from a very young age. I got into rugby and played a very, very high standard of that. And with that came a lot of learning, a lot of physical education, learning about my body, learning how it moved. And with that, there was, again, as in any high-end sport, there was a plethora of injuries to come along with it because I was learning and discovering my body. So, spent a lot of time with physiotherapists learning. Unfortunately, I had a really bad injury when I was younger, about 16, tore a posterior cruciate ligament in my knee, and that forced me kind of out of the traditional rugby scene, and then took me into personal training. So it was a blessing in disguise, really, because I then got to take all of this information I'd been learning over the years that I was really, really interested in around rugby and conditioning and getting the body moving well, and I could really, really focus on the aspects that I really wanted to. So I was very, very excited about that. I did my personal training qualification when I was 18. I know I look about 35 now. I'm only 26. It's a struggle every day. I have to shave off the side so you can't see the grays coming through. That's why I do it. But yeah, I then went into sports massage therapy about 3-4 years ago, because I found that the more I was looking into it and everything with the human body, obviously everything is connected and related, and it's very, very interesting how those things work out. So by going down the sports massage therapy route, it really gave me a fantastic foundational understanding of anatomy and physiology, of how the body works, of how the body moves, biomechanics, and I just got this interest. I just got hooked. And the more people that I began to work with that were clients at the time that were just experiencing maybe little niggles, pains, issues, I was going, okay, well, maybe there is something here. Obviously, I can treat them manually through sports massage therapy, but when we look at like the corrective exercise route, there is a huge broad range and spectrum of things that we can do to potentially help someone get back to or reduce the pain that they're experiencing in day-to-day life or in the gym. And that was it. Like straight away I was hooked. When I would treat someone and work with someone one-on-one, give them a few corrective exercises, and the next week they'd come back and they'd be like, Matt, I've had this issue in my shoulder or my back or my glute or my hip for X amount of months, and now finally I'm not as conscious of it, or it's not causing me as much pain during my workout. And that for me, as someone who's suffered quite a lot of injuries, is like the best thing I could ever hear. And I get a real kick out of it now. It's really, really exciting for me for someone to come back and be like, oh my God, like I've just managed to go out and do my first 1K and my ankle isn't on fire and I don't feel like I need to, have it rested and elevated for 5 days before I can go and do something again. That for me is like a huge win. And that's kind of what I've built a lot of my training, a lot of my branding around, just making sure that we're doing those little things that in the long term give us really, really, really good back return on investment. And I think this and corrective exercise and, pain screening, which I guess to an extent you could kind of say that we're doing here is taking an issue and then hopefully with all those factors figuring out what the actual issue is and then, working down the line to kind of reduce that pain.
So that leads us perfectly on to the next question I've got for you. I'm like this, I'm going to ask you lots of questions. So what exactly does a sports therapist do? I think it's very important to be clear on what that range of services is, if you can define it.
Yeah. Sports massage therapy is traditionally a very, very hands-on thing. Feeling around for areas, of tension throughout the body and then looking how that feeds onto each other, looking at referred pain and bits and pieces, and obviously helping to break down, mobilize muscle tissue, to hopefully then allow that person to go on and do things without pain that they're potentially suffering. But I think it's very interesting that what we're doing here is not necessarily just a sports therapy route, but it's also a nice blend of the training too. Because we're taking that kind of pain screening and isolating and finding out what the issue is, and then potentially working obviously alongside your wonderful self to create that plan of action with a small few tweaks here and there that might just have someone, you know, learning about their body, learning how to activate something, learning how to turn something off, and the process of doing that and the education behind that. And I know, you know, you're obviously massive on education, as I am myself, you know, giving everyone, like all these wonderful people watching the live stream this morning, all of the tools and tricks that they need to keep on progressing down the line. Because as coaches, that's what we love to see, you know, and we get that strange little kick out of it from seeing all of our clients that are just killing it out there and doing really well, and not having some of the maybe negative associated effects alongside it, like the pain or struggling with any movement or anything like that. So yeah, sports massage therapy is traditionally very hands-on, but in doing so and doing the sports massage therapy, obviously a large portion of that from my side of things is doing screening with someone, is looking at the body and saying, okay, well actually you realize that this shoulder's slightly higher than here, this shoulder, this hip slightly lower, you can see we've got an offset here, I can see that actually your arch is collapsed in on your foot, and then when we look at the chain of command, boom, that is why we're having this pain over in this shoulder. And really, a lot of sports massage therapy and a lot of therapy in general around the fitness industry it's just like finding the missing bits of the puzzle. It's like putting the puzzle together, seeing what we've got, and then, okay, where is the issue here? Okay, we need to strengthen this. Oh, okay, we need to loosen this. We need to mobilize this. We need to condition this. And then when we go through and then put all those bits and pieces together, hopefully we have a happy human being, and that's the most important thing, right?
Like all the other things, weight loss is a bit of a detective work as well. So yes.
Yeah, massively so. It's for a lot of us, it's like, okay, let's take all of like these ingredients and then try and make something of it, and you know, try and see if there's anything missing, what we can put in there to make it even better. That's our job, right?
I've already few people wanting to you know, work with you. So yes, these are very common things we see, things you mentioned just then: hips out of alignment, shoulders out of alignment. We see that a lot. Some people recently have been noticing, because they've got better mind muscle connection now with the weight training, that they're noticing that like one glute's activating and the other one isn't, one biceps activating and the other one isn't. You know, we can do things on a practical front, like give people loose weights to try and see if that will help the activation, but usually it's a biomechanical issue, right?
Yeah, and this is like, again, like this is why I get so excited about the human body. It's so interesting to me. Like the dynamic between it is that, you know, traditionally we've kind of seen that like a lot of people's go-to over the years have just been like, you know, stretching, you're probably too tight, it's all built up. And the kind of, the more we're looking at things now and the more research we're seeing is that, okay, maybe it isn't necessarily just that you're tight, but the actual correct muscle groups that should be working aren't quite as active, like you've said. And just going through those not necessarily simple, but like those very, well, I guess they are simple in the way, like activation exercises, just to get those muscles firing again. You then begin to realize, oh, okay, tightness wasn't necessarily my issue or, you know, limiting factor. It was the fact that the muscle opposite that area wasn't working as it was supposed to. So then when we go through, when we do a little bit of activation and we go, oh, okay, that left glute is finally firing. And then we get into a squat and we go, oh my God, I've never felt so strong at the bottom of a squat in all my life, or my knees didn't collapse in, or my lower back didn't hurt. You're like, okay, well, we're doing something right. So this is the first tick in that box on that like investigation list that we've got to go through, and then going through and then seeing what we can do from there. You know, do we need to build up the hamstrings more? Does the lower back need a little bit more assistance? Is your glute medius really weak? Is your glute max really weak? And just all these little things that actually, when we do get them working properly, they have such a profound effect on your training, because psychologically you're not going in there and just everything you're thinking, oh, well, my left side doesn't feel quite right. My right side's, oh, what's going on there with my back? And actually you're not contributing that attention to your mind muscle connection, or focusing on contracting, or focusing on being in the right posture position, focusing on your breathing to allow you to get through the set. And actually when you go through, and it's only when you come out the other side, you go, oh my God, like there's so much going on here that I wasn't even aware of. And then once you come out the other side and you feel so much better, you're like, why wasn't I doing this before? That's I'm sure you know. I do the same thing all the time. I'm like, why didn't I do
I
this
mean,
10
when
years
people
ago?
have existing injuries, you know, I've got an injury from running. You know, you can sometimes go into a workout thinking more about protecting yourself than you do anything else. So you're going in with a protective, a sort of mindset, and of course that completely limits everything.
Yeah, but then also it's that thing as well. And you know, myself and yourself especially can talk upon this because we're people that love to train regardless. And we both know that we will go into a session and not necessarily feel 100%, but we need that workout. Like we want to feel that, we want to get it done. So then the question is, how can we take that workout and remove some of those things that are going to cause us greater issues down the line? And potentially, what simple things could we swap out that would activate those areas of
Yeah.
like imbalance or worry for us going into the session that will actually give us a better session because we're going into it prepared? And it's just little
Yes.
tweaks like that. Like we know that unfortunately injuries are kind of part and parcel of the long-term progression. And your injury isn't necessarily going to come from your exercise. You know, the amount of people that reach into a cupboard and put their back out every day is ridiculous. Getting in and out of a car, the exact same thing. So I think it's you know, really interesting once we start actually helping people and getting them moving again, not just in the exercise that they're finding it, but in day-to-day life, just feeling better, feeling stronger. Yeah, that's what it's about for me. You know, I think
Yeah.
moving better and feeling better in yourself every day is a consequence of you doing your training right, your nutrition right, your lifestyle, sleep, etc., etc., etc. You know, they definitely all add up 100%, which I know you're big
Yeah.
on too, which is why I'm so happy that we're working together.
The hip hinge is, you know, something that I just desperate for people to learn because, you know, I read a fact that you can bend forward up to 4,000 times a day. So if you think you're bending forward badly 4,000 times a day, then you imagine the wear and tear that's going on there in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I did 20 years worth of care work, and I never had a bad back. So mastering the hip hinge and learning how to use your muscles when you bend is potentially, you know, the secret to going into old age. Look at his face.
It's so true though. Like it's really true that a lot of us aren't thinking necessarily like about the future or about what our body is going to be like. But if we do this stuff right now, we will have such a fitter, healthier, and hopefully longer life to be living because we're doing things correctly the first time. And I think that's the really big kind of hit home moment, is that yes, we can prescribe this, yes, we can give you all of the tools, but to an extent it's still down to you as the client to go away and do those bits and pieces and give us feedback and check in with us and let us know if there's anything that you're struggling with. Because you know, there's a really interesting, I had a conversation with I run a strength and conditioning podcast, and I had a wonderful experience with a gentleman, a very high-end coach over in Australia, and he was kind of saying, you know, you can have the most incredible, elaborate, fantastic, scientifically tight plan, but there will always be one person in the world that comes along and goes against everything that you've ever thought about. And I think that's really interesting as a coach, because for us, it really keeps us on our
Oh,
toes. We have to
oh,
keep on thinking about how we're going to approach these things. And it's the exact same with this. You know, we can be kind of stuck in our ways and say, okay, well, you know, this is probably related to that, this is probably related to that, but there's always going to be one person that's completely different. So then we have to take a step back as a coach and learn like we do and reflect and educate
even when
ourselves. Yeah, exactly, because then we can give you guys, you know, a better service and a better value. And I think that's really important to kind of touch on too, is that no one's issues will be the same, even if they are the same. You've got lower back pain, okay, cool. It's not necessarily the same lower back pain as X, Y, Z, or knee pain or whatever, you know.
That's the next question I'm going to ask you.
Cool.
I'm flowing. So do you see a lot of people who have hurt probably more their lower back than anything else, and just been too scared to work out after that, or have decided, actually, because I see this a lot, people hurt themselves and decide that they are actually broken. They're broken and never exercise again after that.
Yeah. It's incredibly popular that happens. For me, I have a little bit of an issue with like doctors and GPs and stuff, because they're very quick to hop on the, well, take it easy, don't do too much. And actually, when you look at all the scientific research, especially anything around the spine, the worst thing you can do is to become sedentary, because it's a supportive structure of the body, and if you are not exercising a supportive structure, it will degenerate. So when you need and require that, it won't be there. So if you have a back problem and you don't exercise it and you don't get your back stronger, you're only going to have a greater back problem unless you have surgery. And that, for me, is the biggest thing. I have had posterior cruciate ligament tear in my right knee. I've also torn the anterior cruciate ligament. I've done meniscus damage. I've torn my pec in half. I've done all this crazy stuff. I've never been under the knife once, ever, because I want to avoid it at all costs. And if there is a way that we can go and strengthen the body, which means that we don't have to go down that route, that invasive route, you know, sometimes it's necessary, don't get me wrong, but in my opinion, a lot of the times you don't necessarily need to do it. It is a very quick fix and it's easy, but by doing some very simplistic rehabilitation, prehabilitation stuff, we can actually get the body supporting that structure as it should have been to start off with, which is actually probably why the injury occurred in the first place.
Exactly. Basically saying, I hate it when the GP says it's your age, or it's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to kind of say that it's an age, or it's because of this, or it's because of that. You know, the really important thing I think to take home for people is that doing this stuff that you do, doing the stuff that I'm talking about, anyone can do it at any age. It's just progressive or aggressive. Okay, you're 85 and you've got a really bad back. Can you still pick up a 5 kilo kettlebell from the floor? Cool, fine, that's brilliant. We can still do something with that. It's still going to give you overload and it's still going to give you results. Just because you're not lifting 150 kilos at 21 years of age, it doesn't matter. It's all relative. Stop comparing yourself. If you get something out of it, fantastic. That's a win, right?
Yeah. Oh, a good question. Nicole's saying, did GPs get any kind of training in exercise and nutrition? They don't in nutrition, I know that much.
No, they get absolutely nothing in nutrition. I've spoken quite in depth to kind of 3 or 4 GPs that I've had the pleasure of sitting down with, and yeah, they get about half a day, maybe a day course on like the basics of nutrition. But as you know, I'm sure you know, I know, and a lot of people in the fitness industry know, nutrition is responsible for a hell of a lot. Even when you look at like hormonal responses in the body, that would otherwise have been, you know, manipulated with pharmaceutical drugs, there is to an extent something you can do with the things you can just go buy down at Lidl or Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Asda. And once again, you're not having to put something in your body that you don't necessarily need to. GPs and stuff, I understand where they come from, but I don't always necessarily think they have the best way of executing or going about it necessarily. And obviously, I think that's where it's really important that, you know, physiotherapy comes into play. And obviously, I'm not a physiotherapist. I don't say that I am. But if it's a case of that you are really struggling, then that's then potentially a route that you go down, because the physiotherapists in my world that I've seen and worked alongside, and I've had the opportunity to work alongside some absolutely incredible physiotherapists. They are like the GP for your body. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I think it's important to touch on the case of that if there's something that I don't honestly feel like I can potentially help you with, I will always outsource and I'll always go to them. And I've worked with a fantastic physiotherapy centre in Worthing under a lady called Kathy Atkinson, who's fantastic, who set up the sports rehabilitation centre down at Sussex Sharks, which is actually, funnily enough, where I had to go to when I tore my posterior cruciate ligament in my knee. So it's really crazy how everything has happened. You know, I'm 15, 16 years of age. I'm in her clinic being treated by someone. And then 5, 10 years down the line, I'm actually working alongside her at another clinic in Worthing. And, you know, we had a fantastic gentleman, Paul Fawley, who was the England rugby first team physiotherapist. Which, you know, you can't buy that kind of knowledge, and being able to sit down with people like him and discuss methods and modalities of training and rehabilitation and what works, like, just blew my mind. And I'm like you in the sense of that once I've got all of this information, like, I just want to share it with everyone. Like, I just get like verbal diarrhea. I'm like, try this. Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, we love seeing people get better. So yeah, there will be times like that, especially if we have consultations and I start to get a little bit excited. Just bear with.
Well, my team are an enthusiastic bunch, so it's really nice.
I like
Oh,
that.
Hayley, I'm glad you said about what I was going to ask you what you do if you can't help someone, but you've already answered that, so that's fine.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially when it comes to this sort of stuff, for me to go out there and say, you know, I don't necessarily know. Now, just because I don't know right now doesn't mean that I won't be able to educate myself. You know, there are so many platforms out there. And again, like you and I'm constantly educating, I'm constantly learning. I'm in the middle of a strength and conditioning mentorship program at the moment. So again, just increasing, expanding my knowledge. And then after I've done this, I'll then go into a therapy-based course. So whether it be like scraping or, you know, manipulation or acupuncture or something. So just constantly developing, because they all feed each other. Do you know what I mean? And you can always draw aspects from all these different, you know, areas to give you, you know, the best plan possible to move forward with. So I think that's a really important thing too.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at their comments. They're all shouting, "He's one of us!" Already been initiated, apparently.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know what that means, but I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm going to take it as a positive.
It's your enthusiasm, I think they're loving. So Hayley said, had a hip alignment years ago after giving birth, and it sorted out my shoulder problem. So really interesting what you say.
Yeah. Now I can't remember if it was you that I was treating, or there was someone else, and they came to me and they were experiencing shoulder pain on one side. They didn't really know much about it, and then we looked and we were like, "What's going on with your feet?" And you're like, "Oh, the arch has collapsed in on that side. Now, did you have an injury?" "Well, yeah, ages and ages ago." It's like, "Oh, okay. Well, actually, let's start working on this, because this is the bottom of the chain of command." And you work on it, and it's like, oh, then everything above that chain of command doesn't have to work and overcompensate, which means that your spine is then better, and it's not having to work really, really hard to overcompensate. And voila, a shoulder problem has been fixed by doing something in your ankle. And this is what I mean, like, some of the puzzles that we're trying to put together are very complex. And it's a puzzle with moving parts. So the puzzle doesn't look the same.
Yeah, it's exactly the same when I work with mindset. The symptom is one thing, I'm getting angry or feeling guilty, but actually the cause, the root cause is something so unrelated to that. It's ridiculous. It's like it just sort of seeps through the body and just pops out in another place. And it's just it's fascinating. Lily says she wants scraping.
Ooh, yeah. Have you? We've done like little bits and pieces with the tool that I had, didn't we? Yeah. It's all
right.
It's intense. Yeah. I use scraping in a slightly different way than I think like a lot of mainstream people do it. again, I'm one of these people where I'm like, I'll take take the aspects of things that I like, that I know works, and then put it into my toolkit. So like there are loads of people that will do scraping, so it looks like you're like a burn victim, or you've like been in a road collision and you've got all of this crazy, blood all everywhere that's been raised to the surface. And it's like, okay, yes, there's a limiting return on investment there. Like if you're going to do that really, really, really badly, your body's then going to go into a state of, oh, there is trauma here, I actually need to protect myself. So like with scraping, for example, I'll use it to an extent with clients to, start to break down a little bit of that muscle tissue, give me a little bit more mobility, and then go through some of the other tools and things that I can then use to my disposal, rather than just relying on one thing. And I think that's important. When you rely on one thing as a therapist or as a trainer, it becomes very, very dangerous, because you kind of get locked into your ways, and it's like, well, anything outside of this parameter is bad. And it's like, no, there's so many different things that we could be doing right now. What is the best for the client? Because that's what we want at the end of the day, isn't it? We want those guys to get better.
Brilliant. Love it, Matt, love it. So final thing then is, people will be able to contact you. We've got a way of doing that. I'm basically putting it on my courses, so it's for my clients. People can contact you that aren't, but they can say, if they just mention TeamYo, then that's helpful.
Yeah.
So you'll be asking them how they came across you. And then on my teachable platforms, which is my courses, I will put your contact details on there.
Yeah, and I put together a little consultation form. I don't know if you've read through that yet, but then obviously I can send that out to people too. So the whole concept will be, given the consultation form, learning a little bit about you guys, maybe a little bit about your history. There are a few different questions. It's like 6-7 questions, so it doesn't take long to fill out, and then we can hop on a consultation call via Zoom or WhatsApp, or just a normal call, or whatever it is, for half an hour, discuss through in more depth and create a really, really good picture of what the actual issue at hand is here. And then we can kind of go away and then start to put together the proactive plan of kind of getting you back to where you need to be. And obviously that's when myself and you will go into discussions to see what is best for you guys. Because once again, we keep on coming back to it. We just want whatever's going to help you guys out the most. So
I just want people to do really well with everything that they try to do.
Yeah.
Not have a bad...
But like we discussed that as a coach though, and I know because we've spoken about this, like it's really tough for coaches when their clients are struggling with something that's kind of holding them back, because then they have that like negative thing in the back of their head. And for us, we want to create that positive energy. We want to create that positive bubble, and we want to kind of have that upward spiraling positive effect mentally then physically, because they feed each other. And then the more you have it, the better it gets, and the more you excel. So, I think it's really important for us, if we can keep our clients, you guys, as healthy and as happy as possible. You guys are going to see better results, so you're going to adhere to it more. You guys are going to feel better, so you're going to want to adhere to it more. And then, if I'm being truthful, that makes us look even better. So it's a win-win. Do you know what I mean? You're getting everything out of it, and you guys are doing a tremendous job of making us look great at our jobs, because you're actually doing what you're told.
Do as you're told.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, just do it once, but do it right.
Oh, hang on. Hayley's saying, I was going to ask about acupuncture. You just mentioned it. I still have the shoulder pain, and my doctor treated it with acupuncture. Sorry for all the questions. What about being hypermobile? Oh, is this a women thing? Because everyone that I teach is hypermobile practically.
Yeah, there are a lot of females that are hypermobile, and obviously, there are guys that are too. I've got a couple of clients that I work with that are hypermobile, in like knees and elbows and stuff. But obviously, just because everyone's put together slightly differently, females generally there tends to be a tiny bit more like ligament tendon laxity, which is why you can kind of see that overextension, especially through knees and elbows and stuff like that. But For anyone that is hypermobile, I actually think that this is even more important for you than general day-to-day people, you know, your average Joe, if you will, whoever that is, because ensuring that your muscular system is supporting the joint is actually the main focus, because the ligaments and tendons aren't going to give you an end range of motion, which is a true end range of motion. So we have to learn. It's harder for you because you have to learn where your body is in that space. And if your elbow wants to go whoop every single time, we have to go, okay, well, if that's whoop, that's okay. And then we need to learn to strengthen ourselves in that space.
Because I'll say to someone, did you know that your elbow's hypermobile? And they're like, no. And I'm like, look in the mirror. And they go, oh, like that. They see it when they look.
Yeah.
And then it's learned, yeah, like exactly what you say, when you're in a plank and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, planks, press ups, anything where you're at like full extension of anything. Well, it's a lot easier to see in those positions. And it's, yeah, then as a coach where you're like, oh no, because you know that there are all of these horror stories and stuff that are associated with hyperextension, but generally they always tend to be associated with some form of like extreme weight or really, really poor technique. So, you know, if you are hypermobile, not the end of the world, but it does mean you're going to have to think a little bit more. It does mean that you're going to have to contribute a little bit more attention and focus to start off with. But then I argue in doing so, your proprioception becomes better. So you understand where your body is in that space, whether it's active or not. You learn more about yourself, which is actually then just going to help you further on down the line too. So,
Completely.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful journey. I loved that, learning about the inside and looking inside was my favourite bit of weight training, really, still is.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, I love the fact that you deal with so much stuff holistically too, because I think that's another really, really important, you know, bring home point is that, okay, yeah, you could have had like a bad session or whatever, but is it because your body's really, really bad, or is it because you've had a really tough day at work, you're arguing with your spouse, you know, you're about to come onto your cycle, you've got all these hormones kicking around your body, and actually you aren't doing anything mentally for yourself, you aren't journaling, you aren't taking out any of that, you know, excess stuff that you don't necessarily want or need in there, but happens in our brain every day anyways. And then actually what that does for you physically, and not having those thoughts and stresses and whatever, that then allows to free up that space for you to kind of get into your training and really focus and enjoy on those things. And that has a profound effect too, guys. So again, I'm really excited that we're getting to do this, because I think as a team, we're really going to be able to attack this from all angles. So that's exciting.
Yes. Helena asked, are you more susceptible to injury after an intense stretch class?
Well, like for me, looking at coming into a session, I would optionally not do static stretching. So I wouldn't do the kind of traditional stretching that you were taught, you know, in PE, where we're going to hold this quad stretch for 10 to 15 seconds, and then we're going to hold this glute stretch for 30 seconds and just sit in those positions, because we will create a little bit of elasticity in the muscle tissue. And then when you're going into a workout, especially if it's demanding, if it's underweight and resistance, which is what I'm used to, you know, I compete in strongman, I deal with big weights. So I have to make sure that the body is 100% going into it. Otherwise injuries occur. So yeah, I think that's really important, that you need to make sure that going into the session, your body is doing what it's meant to be doing. And if we're stretching it, and we're not allowing that supportive structure to hold us in place because it's been extended and stretched and it has elasticity to it now, okay, well, that particular area might not be doing its job as well as it could have been now. So I think you have to think about it like that. If you're going to go into a workout, I wouldn't necessarily do really long static stretching. I do a little bit more, you know, ballistic stuff, something that's going to mobilize the tissue, but again, increase the heart rate, because you never really want to go into a training session cold or really, really loose, because actually we require an amount of tightness, like hip flexors, for example. Everyone loves to talk about stretching out the hip flexors. You know, really, really tighten the hips. Okay, let me stretch out your hip flexors. Okay, well, the hip flexors, guys, actually support the lower spine. They attach onto the spine to help support you. So if you are stretching out a supportive structure and then you're requiring that structure to work, it isn't going to work. So what do? We don't stretch the hip flexors. We look at the opposing muscle groups, the glutes, oh my God, and we activate them and we warm them up and we get them strong, because in strengthening the glutes, the hip flexors have to give out because it's opposing muscle groups. Your bicep can't contract where your tricep does. So in doing so, the tricep has to relax. If this is our hip flexor and this is our glute, we strengthen this. Hip flexor pain's gone. And this is the stuff that we talk about.
It's beautifully simple.
Yeah. But and I think that's the other important thing. In the fitness industry, so many people, guys, so many people want to overcomplicate this stuff to oversell you and make you think, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, I don't know, oh, okay, I'm going to have to go down with this coach because they're telling me that they have all of the, you know, the right answers. It's not crazy rocket science. You know, you don't have to have a Nobel Prize to work this stuff out. I certainly don't. I tell people that I do press-ups for a living. Like, I'm not sat here as a scientist, but, you know, when we take those things and we do them correctly, they have profound effects, guys. Profound effects.
Brilliant. Yeah, someone was asking about having an ice water bath before a workout. You already answered that. Don't go into a workout cold.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff around cold therapy anyways. Now, when you look at like the whole rest ice compression elevation, the original doctor that put out that information about 4 years after that study was released and kind of rice was kind of taken on board as a really popular tool, it was actually shown that ice might not necessarily be the greatest thing for recovery, because the ice, although it kind of reduces inflammation short term, it actually also stops the inflammatory recovery response from the body. So what you might actually be doing is you might actually be pushing your body back several days in terms of actually getting everything to help the body recover. So this is the other thing, you have to be proactive with this stuff. You know, when we get taught, like the stuff that I was taught during my PT stuff when I was 18 is almost completely irrelevant now. And I think that's an important topic to touch on, is that this stuff is constantly ever changing and evolving the more we understand and know about the human body. And as things go on, we realize that, okay, asbestos wasn't the greatest thing. We probably shouldn't have been putting it in houses. Smoking around children and in pubs and closed spaces, probably not great. Smoking, probably not healthy for you. Stuff changes, guys. Stuff changes. And it's the same with the fitness industry. Stuff that was the mainstream 5, 10, 15 years ago might have been completely disproven and disbanded at this point. So I think that's nice why, you know, people like ourselves get to work together, because we are still educating ourselves about what is actually relevant out there, because I think it's important to always have your finger on that pulse.
There are more questions, but that's fine. They can bloody get in touch with you.
Yeah, hey, I'm vibing right now. I'm good. Like, I don't mind. Whatever. I'm ready for anything right now. I'm having
fun. So yeah, so go get a consultation with Matt. See what you can do with him. That's it, really.
Yeah, and just be your amazing, wonderful, beautiful selves. That's it. Enjoy life. Have fun.
Welcome to the team, Matt. I can't wait to see what you're going to be.
This is going to be crazy. This is either going to be the best thing ever or disastrous by every stretch.
Yeah, I'd never know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, let's see what happens. That's what life is about, right? Let's have some fun. Let's go with it.
I haven't put the info live yet,
That's
actually,
cool.
guys. So because I'm just finished, because Matt's just made like a contact form, so you need to fill that in before you actually speak to him. So I've got to link that to Teachable, and then I'll make it available straight away.
Yeah, so in that form, obviously, you just put in key bits of information like your name. You'll end up dropping your email address in there anyways. Once you've filled out that form, guys, you don't actually have to do anything else. I'll be notified that the form has been filled out. I can then hop in there. I can check over what you've written and have kind of an overview of what the issue and case is moving forward. Then I'll touch base with you, and we can then figure out a time that works for the both of us to sit down and have this consultation, sort out the payment structure beforehand, and then we can get into it and then hopefully move down the line. So for you guys and for both of us, hopefully it's going to be a pretty smooth, seamless transition. So yeah, I'm pumped.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was just awesome.
That was fun.
Have a lovely Sunday.
Yes, you two. I need to now try and figure out how to get off of this thing. We'll see. We'll see. Right. Take care, guys.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.